Welcome back to XRP Insider, your trusted source for the latest XRP news, Ripple developments, crypto market analysis, and institutional updates shaping the future of digital finance. Today's update is one XRP holders have been waiting for because the market is showing signs of strength again as Ripple continues building momentum behind the scenes. XRP is currently trading around the $1.41 to $1.42 range here on May 10, 2026. And despite recent volatility across the broader crypto market, XRP continues to hold firm near an important breakout zone that analysts have been closely watching for weeks now. What's really interesting is that this price stability is happening while some of the biggest financial institutions in the world continue moving deeper into blockchain adoption. Investors are paying attention because this no longer feels like simple speculation. The conversation around XRP has shifted toward real-world financial integration, institutional trust, ETF growth, and long-term utility. The market sentiment right now can best be described as cautiously optimistic, but many traders believe the next major move could arrive very quickly if XRP manages to secure a strong breakout above current resistance levels. One of the biggest developments creating excitement around Ripple and XRP recently came after reports revealed that UBS disclosed exposure to Ripple through a new SEC filing. This immediately caught the attention of both institutional investors and retail traders, because UBS is not some small regional bank. We are talking about one of the largest financial institutions in the world. Whenever a major banking giant like UBS shows exposure to a blockchain-related company, the market interprets that as growing confidence in the long-term future of the technology. XRP reacted positively after the news spread because investors understand what this could mean moving forward. Institutions tend to move carefully and strategically, especially when dealing with digital assets. They do not jump into these markets randomly. Many analysts believe this is another sign that Ripple is gradually becoming integrated into mainstream finance at a level most people still underestimate. This news also added more credibility to the idea that XRP is evolving beyond being viewed as just another cryptocurrency and is increasingly becoming part of a broader institutional financial infrastructure. At the same time, another major headline sent shockwaves through the crypto industry after reports surfaced that Ripple had reportedly completed a historic settlement on the XRP Ledger in collaboration with JPMorgan and Mastercard. According to circulating information, this integration connected XRPL with live institutional banking systems focused on cross-border tokenized treasury operations. If these developments continue expanding, this could become one of the biggest real-world blockchain implementations we have ever seen. The reason this matters so much is because cross-border payments remain one of the largest inefficiencies in global finance today. Traditional banking systems are often slow, expensive, and fragmented. Ripple has spent years positioning XRP and the XRP Ledger as solutions to these exact problems. Now investors are starting to see signs that the vision may finally be materializing on a massive scale. The involvement of names like JPMorgan and Mastercard naturally adds legitimacy because these are globally recognized financial giants. Whether you are bullish or bearish on XRP, it is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore the institutional interest surrounding Ripple's ecosystem right now. Another signal that has investors paying close attention is the continued accumulation by XRP whales throughout the first quarter of 2026. Data shows that large wallets holding over 1 million XRP tokens accumulated more than 1.2 billion XRP during Q1. That is an enormous amount of buying activity happening behind the scenes, while many retail traders were still uncertain about market direction. Historically, whale accumulation has often been viewed as a bullish signal because these investors usually have access to better market intelligence and tend to think long-term rather than emotionally reacting to short-term price swings. What makes this even more interesting is that the accumulation continued despite XRP experiencing periods of price suppression and consolidation. This suggests strong conviction among high-net-worth investors who appear to believe that XRP remains undervalued relative to its future potential. Retail traders are now watching closely because whenever whales continue accumulating during periods of uncertainty, it often signals expectations of a larger breakout later on. Of course, nothing is guaranteed in crypto markets, but the scale of this accumulation cannot simply be ignored. Another major catalyst supporting XRP's momentum in 2026 has been the explosion of ETF-related interest following XRP's classification as a commodity earlier this year. Since that historic regulatory regulatory milestone, cumulative spot XRP ETF inflows have reportedly reached approximately $1.44 billion. That is a massive number considering how long XRP operated under legal uncertainty during the SEC lawsuit era. The commodity classification changed the narrative almost overnight because it gave institutional investors greater confidence to participate without fear of ongoing regulatory confusion. ETF inflows are important because they represent consistent institutional capital entering the ecosystem rather than temporary retail hype. Analysts believe this is helping create stronger price stability for XRP compared to previous market cycles. It also places XRP in a much stronger position moving forward as traditional investment firms continue exploring crypto exposure for their clients. Many investors now see ETFs as a bridge connecting traditional finance with digital assets, and XRP appears to be benefiting significantly from that shift. If inflows continue growing throughout the year, some analysts believe it could become one of the strongest long-term catalysts for Ripple's ecosystem. Of course, no XRP discussion would be complete without addressing the SEC lawsuit that dominated headlines for years. One of the most important developments for Ripple this year is that the long-running legal battle between Ripple and the SEC has officially concluded. This is something XRP holders waited years to hear. The lawsuit created enormous uncertainty around XRP's future and heavily impacted investor confidence during multiple market cycles. Now that the case is behind Ripple, many believe the company can finally focus fully on expansion, partnerships, and institutional adoption without the constant shadow of regulatory conflict hanging over the ecosystem. The conclusion of the lawsuit also helped improve overall market sentiment, because it removed one of the biggest risks associated with XRP. Traders who previously stayed on the sidelines due to legal concerns are now reconsidering their positions. Many analysts argue that the market still has not fully priced in the long-term impact of Ripple finally operating without active SEC litigation pressure. For XRP supporters, this moment represents the beginning of a completely new era for Ripple and its broader ecosystem. At the same time, market participants are now turning their attention toward another potentially game-changing development, known as the Clarity Act. This proposed legislation is expected to provide a more definitive legal framework for digital assets across the United States, and many investors believe it could become one of the most important crypto-related laws in years. Regulatory clarity has been one of the biggest obstacles preventing wider institutional adoption of digital assets. Large financial firms typically avoid uncertainty because unclear regulations create legal and operational risks. The Clarity Act could potentially remove much of that uncertainty by establishing clearer classifications and compliance standards for cryptocurrencies and blockchain projects. XRP investors are especially interested because Ripple has spent years fighting for legal clarity. If this legislation passes successfully, analysts believe it could open the floodgates for additional institutional capital entering the crypto market. Many investors are already positioning themselves ahead of potential developments this summer because they believe regulatory clarity could trigger another major growth phase for blockchain adoption in the United States and globally. Another major milestone that strengthened Ripple's position this year was the company's banking charter progress. Ripple reportedly received conditional approval for a U.S. National Trust Bank charter from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency back in late 2025, and by April 2026, operations reportedly became fully active. This development is extremely important because it allows Ripple to offer digital asset custody services within the regulated U.S. banking system. That changes the conversation entirely. Ripple is no longer operating only as a blockchain company trying to partner with banks. It is increasingly positioning itself inside the financial system itself. Institutional investors value regulated custody solutions because security and compliance remain top priorities when dealing with digital assets. By obtaining operational banking capabilities, Ripple significantly strengthened its credibility within traditional finance. Many analysts believe this could eventually help Ripple compete more aggressively in areas such as tokenized assets, institutional settlements, and global payment infrastructure. For XRP holders, these developments reinforce the belief that Ripple's long-term strategy extends far beyond simple cryptocurrency transactions. Now let's talk about the XRP price action itself, because many traders are wondering whether a major breakout is finally approaching. XRP has been consolidating for nearly 3 months, forming what analysts describe as a coiling structure near critical resistance levels. This type of price behavior often precedes large directional moves, because the market is essentially building pressure over time. Analysts are especially focused on the $1.50 resistance level right now, Many believe that if XRP achieves a clean daily close above that zone, it could unlock a rapid move toward the $1.70 range relatively quickly. Traders are watching volume very carefully because breakout confirmation typically requires strong buying participation. So far, XRP has shown impressive resilience compared to some other altcoins, despite ongoing volatility in the broader market. That resilience is helping maintain bullish sentiment among traders who believe XRP may be preparing for its next significant move higher. Of course, resistance levels exist for a reason, and bulls still need confirmation before declaring a breakout. But momentum appears to be gradually building once again. Short-term analyst targets for May 2026 currently place XRP within a projected trading range between approximately $1.40 and $1.60. That means the market is sitting very close to the lower middle part of current expectations. Some traders believe this represents a healthy consolidation period before another upward expansion phase begins. Others remain cautious due to macroeconomic uncertainty and overall crypto market volatility. What makes XRP different right now compared to previous years is that many of the bullish arguments are increasingly tied to real institutional developments rather than purely speculative hype. Traders are not only discussing chart patterns anymore, they are discussing banking integrations, ETF inflows, legal clarity, custody services, and real-world financial infrastructure. That shift in narrative is important because markets tend to reward projects that demonstrate utility and adoption over time. Even though short-term price fluctuations remain unpredictable, many investors believe XRP's long-term positioning has strengthened significantly compared to earlier market cycles when speculation alone dominated the conversation. When it comes to long-term forecasts, opinions vary dramatically, but some bullish analysts are projecting XRP could reach anywhere between $2.80 and even $8 by the end of 2026, under the right conditions. Now, obviously, those are aggressive targets and should be viewed carefully, but analysts supporting those projections argue that continued ETF inflows, combined with successful implementation of the Clarity Act, could create a powerful environment for XRP growth. Institutional adoption remains the key variable here. If Ripple continues expanding partnerships while regulatory clarity improves globally, the market could begin valuing XRP very differently than it has in the past. Some investors also believe that tokenized asset markets and cross-border settlement demand could eventually drive much larger transaction volumes across the XRP ledger. Still, it is important to remember that crypto markets remain highly volatile, and bullish scenarios depend on multiple factors aligning successfully. No prediction is guaranteed, but there is no doubt that optimism surrounding XRP's future has increased substantially throughout 2026 compared to previous years. Retail sentiment across social media platforms also appears to be improving steadily as more traders return to XRP discussions after years of uncertainty. During the SEC lawsuit period, many investors lost patience and shifted attention toward newer projects. But now the narrative surrounding Ripple is changing rapidly. Influencers, analysts, and crypto commentators are once again discussing XRP as a serious contender within the institutional blockchain space. Search activity surrounding Ripple and XRP-related topics has also increased significantly over recent months as traders look for updates regarding ETFs, bank integrations, and legal developments. Community enthusiasm often plays a major role in crypto momentum because market psychology can amplify both bullish and bearish trends quickly. Right now, optimism appears to be slowly returning to the XRP community, as holders believe the ecosystem is finally entering the growth phase they waited years to see. While caution still exists due to broader market conditions, many long-term XRP supporters feel more confident today than they have in a very long time. Another important factor helping XRP maintain attention is the broader shift happening within global finance toward tokenization and blockchain-based settlement systems. Major financial institutions are increasingly exploring ways to move value faster and more efficiently using blockchain technology. Ripple positioned itself years ago to benefit from this transition, and now the market is beginning to recognize how valuable that positioning could become if adoption accelerates further. XRP supporters argue that the XRP Ledger's speed, scalability, and low transaction costs make it well-suited for institutional use cases involving payments and asset transfers. Critics still question whether XRP can dominate such a competitive market, but supporters point to Ripple's expanding institutional relationships as evidence that real adoption is already taking place. Regardless of where someone stands on XRP, it is clear that blockchain technology is no longer being dismissed by major financial institutions the way it once was. That broader industry transformation continues creating opportunities for projects with strong infrastructure and regulatory positioning. For traders watching the charts daily, the coming weeks could become extremely important because XRP appears to be approaching a decision point, technically and fundamentally at the same time. Technical analysts are watching resistance zones closely, while fundamental investors focus on regulatory developments, ETF inflows, and institutional partnerships. When technical momentum aligns with positive fundamental catalysts, markets can move very quickly. Some traders are preparing for increased volatility because breakouts from long consolidation periods often result in sharp price action. Others remain patient, waiting for confirmation before entering new positions. One thing that seems increasingly clear is that XRP is no longer being viewed only through the lens of the SEC lawsuit. The conversation has evolved toward institutional finance, tokenization, and blockchain infrastructure. That change alone represents a major shift in how the market perceives Ripple's long-term potential. Investors now want to know whether Ripple can capitalize on this momentum and transform growing institutional interest into sustained ecosystem growth over the coming years. As always, it is important to approach every market with caution and proper risk management because cryptocurrency investing remains highly volatile and unpredictable. Even though many bullish developments are surrounding Ripple right now, markets can change quickly due to macroeconomic conditions, regulatory updates, or unexpected industry events. Investors should always do their own research and avoid making emotional decisions based solely on hype or social media excitement. XRP's future may look brighter today than it did during the height of the SEC battle, but successful investing still requires patience, discipline, and careful analysis. The crypto market has a history of surprising both bulls and bears, which is why staying informed is more important than ever. What cannot be denied is that Ripple and XRP remain at the center of some of the most important conversations happening in blockchain finance today, and the next few months could play a major role in shaping where this ecosystem goes from here. That's the latest XRP update for today, May 10th, 2026. Between growing institutional involvement, ETF momentum, whale accumulation, regulatory clarity, banking expansion, and technical breakout potential, XRP continues positioning itself as one of the most closely watched assets in the crypto market right now. Whether this leads to the massive breakout many investors are expecting remains to be seen, but momentum around Ripple is clearly building again. Let us know in the comments below where you think XRP could be headed next, and whether you believe the $1.50 breakout level will finally trigger the next major rally. If you enjoyed today's update, make sure to subscribe to XRP Insider, turn on notifications, and stay connected for more daily XRP news, Ripple analysis, crypto market coverage, and institutional blockchain updates as we continue tracking every major development shaping the future of digital finance.